Hey everyone, welcome. It's another Wisdom Wednesday. See where it takes us today. Hi Maria, hi Susan. Tara is here, welcome. Bill, hi. Julie Bryant, Julia is here, Jan is here, Heather's here. Two of my favorite Kathys are here. My teachers and healers are here. Bobby is here, Beth is here. Welcome, everyone. No, Pat, good to see you. Thanks for that great email you sent me, by the way. I really enjoyed hearing about your process. Melissa, welcome. Mary, welcome. We are getting into, on today's, we've been exploring the chakra system. And we are getting today into my favorite chakra, the heart chakra. Why is it my favorite? Most likely because it's imbalanced a lot in me. So I've had to do a lot of work with the heart. And also because I do think I sort of live my life through my heart. It's one of my strongest attributes, but also one of my biggest Achilles heel as well. So I've spent a lot of time with my heart, listening to my heart, getting better at following my heart, but still doubt its veracity, its truthfulness. So I'm hoping that today is just gives you some new things to chew on. That's really the purpose of me doing these, is to have you begin to dive into your own energy system and listen, feel, observe, potentially transform. So let's dive in, because I have to get kids somewhere at 12:30. So we're going to do this in a half an hour. So just like everything else, important to know that our energy, our personal energy system, is what I often refer to as somewhat of a closed system, meaning that if one of your chakras is imbalanced or off, it will inevitably impact the chakras that tend to surround it. So we're reaching the midpoint of there's 7 chakras. We're at 4 today. So we really truly are at the midpoint. We're going to talk a lot about that today, and how the heart chakra is all about balance. But it's important for us just to review. Our root is earth, right? It's stability, safety. Second chakra is water. It is flow, movement, creativity, sensuality, sex, pleasure, all that good stuff. Third chakra is fire, which is really when we start to bring ourselves into the world. We start to put ourselves and our work and our will and our inner power out into the world. So now as we move up into the fourth chakra, the element here is air. And so, air is symbolic. It's often associated with thought. It's associated with freedom, spaciousness. It's the lightest of all the elements. And how many of you, when you've fallen deeply in love, feel like you're walking on air, right? There's a lightness of being that comes along with a really expansive and open heart. So just I love this elemental piece of the chakras. So if you think about earth, earth is unmoving, it stays rigid, it stays fixed. That's our root, safety. Water flows to fit into whatever receptacle it's in. So it sort of disperses into the base of the cup or the bowl. Fire, it moves upward, but it always moves along the track of whatever the fuel is, right? So whereas earth, water go down, fire goes up. Then we get to air. And if you think about this, air disperses throughout an entire space, right? Like there's not a corner of your room that doesn't have air in it, right? Like it evenly disperses. So there's definitely a sense of equilibrium and evenness with the air element and with the heart chakra. So as I said before, we're now getting into the midpoint of our energy system. And so this really has to do with balance. It's where these 3 lower energies sort of meet the upper 3 energies. And the upper 3 energies are spiritual, esoteric, sort of altered states of consciousness. The lower three are what get us out of bed in the morning, help us procreate, find jobs, make money, move through the world, right? And it all starts to congregate or meet in this heart chakra. So, this perhaps is the reason why the heart is revered in, I can't think of a wisdom tradition that doesn't have something to say about our heart chakra. If you even think about our modern day wisdom traditions, such as Hollywood, movie making, the music industry, even, social media, there's a lot that's said about the heart, mostly, broken hearts and, but the heart is always held in really a venerable place in all these different traditions. So, Chinese medicine, they call the heart the emperor, and the heart is thought to be in their system of healing and health, thought to be the most important organ in the body. In the Egyptian culture, when they used to mummify bodies, they always left the heart in the body because they believed the heart was the seat of intellect and feeling. And so, if you were going to live your afterlife in the pyramid, you wanted to make sure you had that seat of intellect and feeling still with you. Judeo-Christian tradition in Proverbs talks about guarding your heart. Your heart is the wellspring of life. And in yoga philosophy, the heart, which is called anahata in Sanskrit, is believed to be the seat of our true self. So who we truly are lives right here in the heart. And interestingly, I've always found this very fascinating. The word anahata translates to mean unbroken, unhurt, unstruck. So this sort of smacks in comparison to what country music says, which is we all have a achy, breaky, broken heart. Yoga philosophy says not possible. Heart is always intact. But where we have to make a really clear distinction is that we're talking about the true self, right? So our ego heart can definitely get broken, but our true self, our higher self, is unbeatable. It's unhurtable, right? It can't be hurt. I want to share this image with you because it's always been very powerful for me. Yoga philosophy also talks about the heart as a cave. So we're often instructed to go into the cave of the heart. The image of a cave to me is it's very palpable. I can feel it. The great Gita Iyengar, who's the daughter of the great BKS Iyengar, she used to routinely say to her students, go into your cave, go into your cave. What she meant by that is go into your heart. And she often explained that when our eyes and our head become still, that's when we're actually in our cave. So in yoga, I teach a lot drishti, like find a focus point, let your gaze stay there. Because when our eyes are darting all over a room, we are in our head space. And Miss Iyengar knew we have to get out of our heads to really be able to sink into the heart, into that cave. So these are what all the wisdom traditions have said about the heart. There's actually some really cool research done by, it's actually a nonprofit out of California. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's called the Heart Math Institute. It's just, let me see, I wrote down the website, I think it's heartmath.org. Go check it out. Lots of great resources on that. But they've started to do quite a bit of research and get it out there to the public, which is fascinating research. Just a couple points that I find especially relevant to our talk today is that the electromagnetic sort of field that surrounds our heart is thought to go out at least 5 to 8 feet, but in some cases can go out miles, which is, even though we're not all together, we still have this energetic connection at the heart. And not, we are all raised in a culture that's very head heavy, very analytical, very thinking heavy. And yet the heart electromagnetically puts out a force about 60 times greater than the head. So not only is the force here much greater than up here, but as they've started to do some research, this is where my mind gets a little bit blown. They believe that the heart has its own functional brain, meaning that our heart can learn, it can remember, it can make decisions independent of the brain. So, the old saying, listen to your heart. What's your heart say? What does your heart want? Right? Like there's probably some truth in that. And then the last piece I want to share from this Heart Math Institute is that there is more information going from our heart to our brain than from our brain to our heart. So we sometimes believe our brain, our mind, how we intellectualize or how we think through something, that's what's in charge. This research is saying, no, it's probably more your heart that's leading the way. I actually just kind of got some chills. And when I get chills, it's usually I get it a lot, but there's a sense of truth in that. So I think, the true center of our being is the heart. So I want to go through four sort of pieces today around the heart chakra. Again, anyone could talk days about this because there's so much depth and there's so much nuance to these chakra systems. So I'm really just scratching the surface, but hopefully still giving you some things to chew on and think about. So the first thing I want to talk about is simply balance, because that is the task of the heart chakra. It's to balance, it's to bring us into a state of wholeness. It is the midpoint. Now, the irony here is, of all the chakras, the heart is the one that tends to most easily get out of balance, right? So it is the energy center that suffers the greatest loss. Um, it it gets rejected by other people. It throws us off the heart. We all have felt pain in our hearts, whether it's through a breakup or a death or a job loss or just being rejected by others. And the shadow of the heart chakra is both grief and rejection, right? All things, again, we've all experienced and will continue to experience throughout the course of our lives. So, what happens well, let me say one more thing. Because the heart is the midpoint and it's most easily imbalanced, when the heart gets imbalanced, it throws all the other chakras off as well, which is why I think why all these healing traditions have put the heart at the center, and why, at least in the yoga tradition, there's so many techniques and tools to heal the heart, to open the heart, to balance the heart, because I think if the heart is really balanced, other things can fall into place. But, what happens when we get rejected and when we go into grief? Well, I'll speak for myself. What happens for me is I shut down, right? Like I close up, I harden up, I put up my armor. Um, I hold people at arm's length, right? I think hopefully you're relating to some of this as well. And the thing about when we put up our armor is we do feel less vulnerable and less able to be hurt. And yet, just think about if you actually did wear some of that armor. I always think of, I love especially when I lived in Chicago, I had a year pass to the Chicago Art Institute. And I loved that place. I miss going to that place, but I would always walk through the Hall of Armor and, they have a huge collection of armor. And, we've all seen movies, but imagine wearing that stuff, right? You can't move. There's not as much freedom. Yeah, you're protected, but, even your identity is totally armored. And so when we put up this heart armor, which again, we all do, we do it as a means for survival and protection. But again, it makes us less than human, right? So we aren't able to really fully live an expansive human life because we're shut down, we're armored up, we've got some massive walls up. So what does it take? Let's go back to The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite movies, and the lion. Why, right? The lion. What does he need to work with? He needs to find courage to face his fears and to be vulnerable. I am a great fan of the poet Rilke. I was thinking he was much older than he is, but I just Googled him today. He was an Austrian poet around, the early 1900s. But he said that ultimately it is our own vulnerability upon which we depend. So vulnerability is a really key thing for us to be able to foster and work with. So this heart is all about balancing. It's balancing our vulnerability with our strength. It's balancing our masculine energy with our feminine energy. It's balancing our earthly duties with our spiritual aspiration. It's balancing both giving to the world, but also, as importantly, receiving back. And it's also balancing love with individuality. So we're going to talk next about love because that's usually what we associate with the heart chakra. But if you completely yield to love, that can be problematic. In fact, D.H. Lawrence calls it a guttering mess. If you yield oneself up entirely to love, you have to learn to balance love with individuality. So you have to be your own person as well as be engaged in relationship. The new psychological term for this is interdependent, right? So we're not independent, we're not codependent, we're interdependent. So we're our own person, but we're also connected with someone else. So let's talk about love. Heart, center of love. We've already established that our true self who lives in the heart is unbreakable. It's the ego that can be broken and feel that, rejection. But fourth chakra love, I want to make a distinction, is much different than second chakra love. Second chakra love is based on an other, right? So there's passion, there's sex, there's eroticism, there's pleasure, right? That's second chakra love. Fourth chakra love has no object, right? So it's more of a sense of being. It's a state of being. It's not about anything on the outside. It's actually about the connection inside. So fourth chakra love is much more steady. It's enduring. It's constant. It's more unconditional. But we're all so messed up around love. Me too, right? And if we look at what our culture has taught us, we really have never learned that love, or we're rarely taught that love is loving self, turning inward. Love, at least as it's depicted in every fairy tale and Disney movie and song, is about love for another. It's a love on the outside. We all carry perhaps some concept that there is another perfect one out there for us, the soulmate, someone who will complete us, someone who will help us live happily ever after. I for sure grew up with that as a young girl in the 80s, watching movies and believing that there was one perfect person out there for me. And this is really damaging. So I wish that culturally we could start to approach love in a little different way. And so, again, as we come back to fourth chakra love, it's truly about being intimate with yourself, making yourself and love for yourself such a priority that you're willing to overcome the inner self-criticism and the inner judgment that you hold towards self. I was just actually with my mentor this morning, or one of my mentors, Kathy, and she said, I don't remember what we were talking about, but she mentioned something about how it's in the Bible, it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. But we focus on loving the neighbor, and we often don't really consider loving ourselves. And that if we can't love ourselves, it's actually really hard for us to love our neighbor. And I would say that's the same in any kind of relationship we have. If we don't have a loving connection to self, it's really hard to have intimacy and loving connection with anyone else. So with love, the next topic, so we've talked about love is the heart chakra is the center point. It's about balance, it's about love, and it's about chemistry. So let's talk briefly about chemistry. This is an interesting topic. I took many, surprisingly enough, chemistry classes in college. I started out pre-med. I thought I might go down the medical route. So I took biochemistry, I took general chemistry. So I know more about chemistry than you might think, although I've probably forgotten a lot of it. But with chemistry, there's bonding that happens, right? There's affinity that happens. There are certain elements that fit atomically better with other elements, and then they create a bond. Well, human bonding is very similar to chemical bonding, and certain people just link up. Sometimes we can't understand it. We're like, why, why am I so drawn to this person? And it doesn't even have to be romantically. There can be people in the community or people we know that we're just like really drawn to them. What is that about? What's the chemistry there? And this is what the heart chakra is about. Well, oftentimes, a person with whom we have chemistry has something in their energy field that we want or we need or we lack in ourselves. And so we are drawn to an aspect of another person that we haven't yet developed in ourselves. So I have an example for this. This happened to me my first week in college. So I left home. I chose a college in Minnesota where I knew no one. So I went to this liberal arts college where I didn't know a soul. And that first week, they planned lots of different mixers for freshmen to go to, and we were really encouraged. Well, by some of the upperclassmen that were there, everyone said, "You have to go to the square dance. You have to go to the square dance." And it was so strange. I'm like, a square dance? Why would I go to a square dance? Well, I heard it enough from enough of these upperclassmen that we had to go that I went. And I ended up in a square with several people that to this day I'm friends with. But the woman that I had just this sort of attraction towards, and not a sexual or physical attraction, but I was just like drawn to her energy, was this very short, small Asian woman named Allie. And so throughout that whole square dance, I just kept thinking, I want to meet this person. I want to get to know this person. There's something about her. Well, I see now, Allie and I became fast friends. She's still a dear friend of mine. But one of the things that I was so drawn to Allie about is that Allie was super feisty and Allie had no filter on her mouth. She said whatever, like there was no filter, whatever she was thinking, she would say, to the point where we would sometimes be like, Allie, I can't believe you just said that. But what I see now, many years later in retrospect, is that one of the reasons I got so bonded to Allie is that I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be someone who could just speak her mind, speak her truth, not worry about how it came out, not worry about if she offended someone, not worry about if she was making enemies, but just like say her truth, right? Speak it loud and proud. And that's what Allie did. So I can see the initial reason why I was drawn to that energy, because she had something so blatant and out there that I was really lacking. So this happens not only in friendships, but obviously happens a lot in romantic relationships. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to know is that we can be attracted to someone who has opposite energy than us, but we have to learn whatever we're attracted to into that person, we have to learn to develop it in us, or the relationship eventually will go south, right? So we might be attracted to someone initially because they're super confident, or they're really artistic and we don't feel like we are. And we have to learn how to develop those pieces in ourselves. So I want to just share very, very brief research, because the question is, do opposites attract? There's that urban legend that opposites attract. Is it true? So I really did do a bit of a dive into the research, and it's super complicated. So there's a lot of research that suggests no, we're actually attracted mostly to people who are similar to us, similar education, similar backgrounds. But there is this line of research that I think is very fascinating that does suggest there may be times when we're attracted to someone who's opposite of us. So one researcher, actually a cultural anthropologist who's studying this, has shown that our chemistry may be related to brain chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen. So people who are ruled more by their dopamine tend to be thrill seekers. They like novelty, spontaneity, flexibility, and they will be attracted to similar people, other high dopamine people. Those ruled by serotonin are more traditionally minded. They're more conventional. They like calm rules, set schedules. They maybe tend towards more religion, and they too are attracted to other serotonin people, right? So like attracts like. Then those who are fueled by testosterone are analytical, logical, skeptical, slightly lacking in empathy. They're not as much maybe in their heart, but they're really great at math and science. And then we have the estrogen heavy people who are intuitive, emotionally expressive, diplomatic, creative, great with people and verbal skills. Well, what do you expect? It seems kind of like, oh yeah, makes sense. Testosterone and estrogen, they tend to match up. So opposites attract in this study. So I found that fascinating. So I guess I question all of you to think about, have I tended to move towards people who are very similar to me, or do I tend to actually go towards people who have some opposite characteristics? It's very fascinating. All right, so we've talked about love, chemistry. Yeah, I will get that for you, Susan. We talked about love, chemistry. We've also talked about balance. Let's get into the last piece, which is healing. So, to heal, the definition of heal is to simply make whole. And all disease, whether it's caused by a germ, whether it's caused by stress, whether it's caused by an injury, is the result of some kind of imbalance in our system. So if we think about the fourth chakra as the seat of balance and love as sort of the ultimate healing force, there is a great potential to bring balance and healing to your life by healing your heart. So healing is super broad topic. Obviously, nothing I can complete in these last 4 minutes, but let's talk just about the heart chakra in general. So all chakras, when they're imbalanced, they either go towards excessiveness or they go towards deficiency. So an excessive heart chakra looks like overgiving. It looks like a lot more focus on others than self. You can live through other people versus live through your own life. Martyrdom, codependency. Let me define codependency because I think it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Codependency is when your good feelings are dependent on someone liking you, approving of you. Codependency often shows up when someone else is not okay. It means you're not okay. The person in your life is not okay, so I'm not okay. And we usually use giving as a way to feel safe in a codependent relationship. So if I'm giving, it makes me feel safe or good in this relationship. So these are all things that show up when the heart chakra is excessive. And I, in my clinical practice, actually do a lot of chakra measurement of my clients. And, one measurement doesn't tell us that much. It tells us what's going on at one point in time. But the really interesting thing happens when you look at people over time. You start to see which chakras tend to be open, which chakras tend to be closed. You start to see a pattern for sure. But I can't tell you how many women I've worked with over the years who have an excessive heart chakra, right? It's always like blasted open. Again, on the surface, it seems like that's a good thing. This person has a lot of love. They're very caring. They're empathic. They're taking care of people. But it always comes at a cost. When we're out of balance, we're out of balance. And so often I've also seen a connection between people who have an excessive heart chakra, and this is actually me as well, and start to develop an autoimmune condition. Ayurvedically, one of my Ayurvedic teachers talks about autoimmune conditions as excess giving. It's giving, 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 and not being able to really take in. And a healthy heart chakra is about giving, but also receiving. And so you might also just sit with yourself and say, am I able to receive? Am I able to receive love and care and nurturing from other people? I've tended to have a harder time with that. I'm great at giving, but much harder at receiving. So an excessive heart can serve you for a period of time, but it burns out, like you'll burn out. So finding that balance point is really important. And then let's talk about the deficient heart. The deficient heart fears intimacy, fears closeness, holds back from people, can come across sometimes as a little cold or guarded. And definitely after a big loss, let's say we've lost a partner or a marriage or a job, or we felt rejected, we definitely will tend to shut the heart down and put those barriers and walls up. But if we never have the courage to get back into some vulnerability, um, eh, we can stay really shut down for a period of time here in the heart space. So, one of the best ways to heal heart chakra is breath. So, if you remember at the start of this conversation, I was talking about the element associated with the heart is air. And so, breath is air, right? And by the way, if we are really intellectual and we like to stay up here, inevitably our breath gets super shallow, right? Because we're not in our heart, we're up in our head. And so breath is such a powerful way to clear and open the heart. Yoga, of course, has a whole section, a whole limb of yoga called pranayama, which is many different breath techniques to open and clear all the energy channels in the body. So I want to end today with just a really brief heart clearing breath technique that I learned from a teacher, Rod Stryker. It is a powerful technique that I've taught over and over. I use it in myself over and over. So let's end today by doing it together. So hopefully you're not driving. If you are, just visualize. Otherwise, close your eyes and settle in. All right, so as we come into this exercise, I want to just acknowledge we all feel pleasure, we all feel pain. We've all experienced loss and we've all experienced love. So we are not alone. And we can carry all of these experiences and still remain in our heart. So feel your feet on the ground, feel your pelvis resting in the chair, and just allow yourself to settle in. In fact, take a deep breath in and exhale, sigh it out, settle in. And then I want you to imagine that above you and actually all around you on all sides is a field of goodness and love and benevolence and light. And in this very brief breath practice, it's just a 2-breath practice. I want you to now visualize that right above the crown of your head is a bright light, love, connection, benevolence. Now, on this next inhale that you take, imagine that light traveling down through the crown of the head right into the center of your heart, the cave of your heart. And as you exhale, let that light start to expand and brighten up the cave. Now, on this next inhale, you make any holding, armor, tightness, darkness around your heart. Let it lift up to the crown of the head. And as you exhale, you let it disperse, you let it go. So we'll do this one last time. It's just 2 breaths, really powerful. So you inhale, drawing light, love, goodness down through your crown into your heart. As you exhale, you let that light expand and grow. On your next inhale, any darkness holding grief, tension in the heart, let it rise up to your crown. And as you exhale, you let it go. You let it release, be recycled by the universe, by the space around you. This could be a technique you continue, maybe 10, 15 rounds, drawing light in, letting expand. Any darkness around the heart, letting it rise up to the crown and then release out. Simple, yet extremely powerful technique. Let's bring our hands together in front of our heart, bow towards your heart. So every time we end yoga, this is what we do. We bow towards the heart, the seat of it all. So namaste, friends. Thanks for continuing to join me for these Wisdom Wednesdays. They've been really a joy for me to put together. It's stuff I've been studying and thinking about and writing about for so long. So it's actually been a really great opportunity for me to put it out there in a new way. So this is saved. This is will be put up on YouTube later today. It's free. Join it, rewatch it or share it with people. It's 12:33. I have to get my kids to Iowa City, so I need to get in a car with them in the next minute. But thank you all for being here. Much love, and we'll see you next week as we move from the throat, from the heart into the most narrow part of the body, the throat. Lots to say here. So join me next week for that as well. And by the way, I am doing a 5-month training program starting February 1. It's called Yoga for the Mind. So it's really bridging the two disciplines that I've spent so much time studying, psychology and yoga. So we're bridging those two. It's a training that you'll receive. It's all online. You'll get multiple videos a week. There'll be an online call with me every week. There'll be some mentorship available, small groups available. And we're going to really dive into how these two disciplines meld so beautifully together. Lots of practical techniques and tools that you'll learn. So I always say that it's a deep dive into yourself, because the best practitioners, yoga teachers, people I know are the people who are diving into themselves and doing their work. So it's a deep dive into self, but it's also, a culmination or putting together of a lot of tools that I use with my clients, that if you are a mental health professional, a yoga teacher, or even just someone who digs this stuff, that you can use in your own life. So if you're interested in that, January 17, Monday is when registration opens, but feel free to reach out before then if you have questions. There is more information on the website about it. All right, y'all. Good to see you. I hope you have a really great Wednesday. I'll see you next week. And I'll be here on Saturday for yoga if you'd like to join. All right. Take care.